Hello, everybody. EJ here, and for anybody new here, I make casual reviews that are just my opinion, so take everything I say with a massive grain of salt. But today I'm going to be doing a new tier list video of Post Malone. I do want to have a bit of an introduction here, though, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of questions being asked. I understand that Post Malone is not the most critically acclaimed or loved from a musical standpoint artist. He is one of the most popular artists in the world, and while the masses seem to love him, a lot of critics seem to have a lot of issues with him. But from a personal standpoint, I will just be right up front. I really do enjoy much of his music. I think that out of all of the more pop artists that also dabble in some hip hop and genres such as that, I feel like Post Malone does it the best. And I feel like he's a very honest and true to what he does type artist. And I just think he's overall a really good, fun character as well. Post Malone in general, I think, is one of the best pop rappers out there of the past few years. He's created some of the best pop rap, in my opinion, or cloud rap, or however you really want to pinpoint it. But I think he's made some of the most fun, energetic, and just overall good pop music and also rap music out there. I understand that Post Malone is not as conscious as an artist like Kendrick Lamar, but and I understand that he's not as technically talented as an artist as some of these other rappers out there. But for me, he makes some of the best pop music, and I felt like dabbling into his discography. But because he only has 3 studio albums and a mixtape, I'm going to be doing 2 tier lists here: one of his albums and mixtapes, and one of his major singles. With that being said, let's get right into this. Here we have Post Malone's 3 studio albums and his mixtape August 26th. As you see the tier ranking, the ranks here are 9 or higher, 8, 7, 6, and 5 or below. But, let's just start this off with his debut mixtape, August 26th. August 26th, I will be right up front here. I think out of all these projects, it is his weakest. And in many ways, I've always felt that August 26th does feel a little more thrown together than, his later projects. I also don't think there's nearly as memorable of songs that are crucial to his career, especially compared to many of the singles he had put out before. I honestly think in his early days, his fun personality and his fun persona really led to him being a very single-centric artist. In the days of August 26th and Sony, I feel like his strong point was making good, solid singles, not so much full-fledged projects. And for that reason, I'm going to put August 26th in that 6 range. I do get enjoyment from it. I have returned to it quite a bit. But I really don't think compared to what Post Malone would go on to do that it is nearly as innovative or as even interesting and memorable per se. And then we have his actual debut studio full-length album, Stoney. This one is a very important album, obviously, in his career. It's his first full-length one. But it was definitely the first project of his the first real body of work of his that I really thought was really well-focused. I do admit, as time goes on, there are flaws on this album that become more and more evident. And as much as I want to rank this up there with his greatest albums, I don't really feel like I feel comfortable putting up that high. Once again, I want to reiterate the fact that the singles he was releasing at the time, I think, were phenomenal. And when you compare the singles to the full-length album, there is a lot of difference there. I feel like there's a lot more filler on the albums. In 2016, he was still a very single-centric artist, in my opinion, so I'm going to put Stoney in that 7 range. 7 range means I really do enjoy this album. I think Stoney is a really promising full-length debut that really shows Post Malone moving in the right direction, really embracing some more pop elements, and overall it has a bit of an R&B tone to it. Definitely, I would argue the album of his that has the most R&B influence, which is something I think he actually tackled quite well. And let's move on to the classic Beer Bongs and Bentleys. Now, if you've been following my great album series, I have talked about this one, but I actually do admit, once again, while this album might not be the most praised body of work ever released by any artist, I have a really, really big soft spot for this album, and I think it is everything I want Post Malone to do, executed in a near perfect way. He cuts out a lot of those filler tracks that were plaguing Stoney, and really refines his sound. Vocally, he sounds much more passionate, much stronger, much raspier, much better, I think. Songwriting wise, there's a lot more diversity amongst the track list. The focus seems to be much more there. And overall, song structures are better. The production is great. I genuinely think, in my honest opinion, and keep in mind this is just my opinion, that Beer Bongs and Bentleys is one of the best pop rap albums of both pop rap, of trap, that I have heard ever. Now, that might sound like a stretch, but keep in mind it's just my opinion. I'm putting this in the 9 or higher. To me, this is the point in which Post Malone transcended just being your kind of like up and coming kind of R&B hip hop guy who's not quite there yet to actually being one of the best pop artists of our time. And I keep on reiterating the fact that he is pop and that he is not the most conscious in terms of lyrics, because I don't want to say that he has the writing ability of like a Kendrick or of Earl Sweatshirt or anything. But I do think that Post Malone really did perfect his craft on Beer Bongs and Bentleys, and it is definitely an album that I come back to more than many other hip hop albums from these past few years. And I just think Post Malone really did hit it out of the park. And then the last album I'm going to be talking about is his most recent LP from 2019, Hollywood's Bleeding. I do admit when this thing first came out, I was very, very excited, and I would have actually put it up here. I do think as some time has gone on, I wouldn't rank it a 9. I think I would probably give it an 8 now. I still think it is a step above some of his earlier projects, but I do think that it isn't really quite as refined as Beer Bongs and Bentleys. However, an 8 is an extremely positive review. I think Hollywood's Bleeding is an excellent album that once again shows Post Malone's diversity amongst different genres in pop and hip hop, and even some bit of rock music as well on Hollywood's Bleeding. And I overall think that the overall theme of the album, the aesthetic of the album, came across very nice, very professional. And I just think at the end of the day, it's definitely still a solid album in Posty's discography. So that is how I rank Post Malone's albums and mixtapes. Beer Bongs at the top, Hollywood's Bleeding next, then Stoney and August 26th. Now, I have a feeling he might release something this year, and I'm looking forward to that. But like I said, since he only has a limited amount of albums, we are also going to rank some singles of his. I put these in order. Now, like I said, this isn't every single. These are mainly singles that came out either before the album that they appeared on or played a significant role. That's why singles like Congratulations and Better Now are on here, but not I Fall Apart, because that came out significantly after Stoney. But the tier here is a little different. The tiers that I have ranked, because I don't like ranking songs out of 10. I think that's unnatural. So you may notice I have the excellent tier at the top, great, good, decent, and a average or below. White Iverson, Post Malone's breakthrough single, without a doubt one of his most influential singles on music. Now, I wouldn't, when I think of Post Malone, as much as I enjoy his music, saying he is extremely influential is still a bit early to call. I do think he's influential on the mainstream pop world. It's hard to say how influential he is in other places, but I do think if there's one single that I think many people could agree on has been proven to be a relatively influential track over the past like 5-6 years now is White Iverson. His debut, I don't know if it's his debut single, but his breakout single. I'm going to put this in the great tier. To me, White Iverson is like everything you want it to do. It did it well. It did everything's very good here. For one, I do think that White Iverson really did push the cloud rap genre in a new direction, and in a much more ethereal, much more spacey direction. And Post Malone was on the top of it here. He was really one of the people spearheading it, and I think White Iverson really has aged extremely well. I do think it is one of his best songs to date. And I just think that I feel pretty comfortable putting his, his breakthrough single this high up. And this also proves my point that early on he wasn't nearly as great at making albums, but he had some pretty strong singles. Too Young, Another great one in my opinion, and I'm actually going to put Too Young also in that great range. Now, this was one that I didn't really appreciate when I first heard it. I sort of wrote it off a little bit, but to me, it shows it goes on a similar path that White Iverson went down, which is kind of down that cloud rap genre, but still, going down that vein. However, Too Young features a much more emotional side to him. Some much more powerful auto-tuned vocals. And it's really sort of a response to the many artists in hip hop that just simply die too young. And I think it's a great pop track. It's great. I love it. I think that those two go hand in hand really, really well together. This next one, Go Flex. This was one that I initially loved a lot. I do think that as time has passed, it has weakened on me, especially compared to the first two. I do think it's not as strong. I am going to put Go Flex in that good tier. I still think it is a good track. It kind of brings a bit country vibes in there as well. Post Malone definitely shows that he does have some country influence, bringing that acoustic guitar in there. Even the way he sings it a little bit is a bit more sort of laid back, a little more Americana sounding than some of his previous works. And lyrically, I feel like it's not as well focused as a White Iverson or as Too Young. But like I said, when it comes down to Post Malone, lyrics are not the main focus. But needless to say, Go Flex continued to prove that he was at this point making some great singles, or at least good singles. And so far up to this point, I think he was doing pretty good. Now we do get to the first single, Deja Vu, which I admit I'm not crazy about. I do think that while this was an extremely important song for his career, having a big collab with Justin Bieber is crucial to anyone's career. Unfortunately, I'm just going to put this in that average rank. Because at the end of the day, compared to the three singles that came before it, I feel like there was nothing too innovative, nothing too impressive or, really shocking about Deja Vu. And it was kind of unfortunate because the singles he had been releasing up to this point have all been relatively good. And while Post Malone has never been the most groundbreaking and innovative artist, I do think that, singles like White Iverson and Too Young definitely were pushing the genre in the right direction. Whereas Deja Vu just sort of did feel like a kind of cheap collab. Um, Overall, my thoughts on it haven't really changed too much over the years, and I'm just going to put that in the average tier. And then we get Congratulations. Congratulations really was, up to this point, his biggest single. One of his most successful singles, too, I think. Definitely one that made a pretty big splash when it first came out. But I do admit, I don't think it's as good as his debut singles, but I'm going to put it in that good tier. It's a really good, solid, kind of party anthem, to say the least. And that's really the way I treat some of his music. It's very party-like. It's very party-centric in a sense. And I think Congratulations came across good, came across well. Like I said, I don't think it was at that level of White Iverson, but I do think Congratulations was a pretty good round off to the Stoney era. Now we get to the more beer bongs and Bentleys era with Rockstar. Rockstar, to me, I would go out on a limb and actually say, in terms of his discography, this is an excellent track. I think Rockstar is Post Malone's best single, actually. I think, or I'm not sure if I would say his best single, but definitely up there. To me, what Rockstar does is he really refines his craft here. Just like how I said on Beer Bongs and Bentleys, he really perfected his craft. I do think on Rockstar that was the first glimpse we had into this new Post Malone. He had the formula down. He had his vocals were getting better. 21 Savage's feature was excellent. And overall, it definitely showed that the follow-up to Stoney wasn't just going to be another Stoney. It was going to be a slightly different sounding album. And I think that message was conveyed very well on Rockstar. Great hook. Definitely an excellent single. Definitely one I've come back to a ton. And next up, we have Candy Paint, which was in like a Fast and Furious soundtrack, and then later on Beer Blanks and Bentleys. I do admit I've never been too crazy about Candy Paint. I'm gonna put it in the decent tier. Candy Paint is a pretty solid track for the most part. It does what it needs to do, but I just think that the hook on there is a bit more bland. It's not as good as I originally wanted it to be, to say the least. And I do think that as time goes on, it definitely shows that it is one of his weaker singles. I don't have too much else to say about Candy Paint, but gotta say it's a little disappointing following one of his best singles, Rockstar. But luckily on Psycho, things would without a doubt be moving in the right direction. Psycho, in my opinion, is a great single. Both, I think, Posty and Ty Dolla Sign's chemistry go together very well. Once again, this isn't the most lyrically genius song out there, and I can understand how it can get some criticism there. But I do think, from a sense, it's a bit more laid back. It's a bit more chill, but I do think that it definitely conveys Post Malone's style that he was going for. And I just think overall the song has aged pretty well over the past 2 to 3 years. I've come back to it a lot. I really enjoy Psycho. And then we get Better Now. As you can tell, I didn't have a single cover for this, so I had to make my own. I'm actually going to put Better Now in the good tier. This used to be my favorite Post Malone song. This was honestly the song that really sparked my interest, especially into Post Malone's music, his way of capturing hip-hop in a very melodic way, very poppy way as well. Really, really did grab my attention. And I got to admit that it has weakened on me since I first heard it. However, I still think it's a really good single. I think that Better Now, it does get a bit too repetitive sometimes, especially when it's super overplayed. But without a doubt, I think that it definitely was a pretty big stepping stone for him. And I think this was definitely the song in which Post Malone was no longer just artist with the hip hop scene. He definitely had reached levels of mainstream volume that he never really reached before. You could either see that as a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not necessarily sure, but I like it. I think it's good. However, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. And actually, yeah. So then we have Sunflower. Sunflower is another one that definitely did really reiterate the fact that he was going in a very pop direction on whatever his next project was going to be, and I'm going to put that in that good tier. Well, I can understand how hardcore, more hip-hop oriented fans of his might be a little turned off by, that track. I think it was good. I think that it was a really solid, single. I don't think it was his best. I don't think it is like the greatest single ever, but for a soundtrack to the Spider-Man movie and just in general for a thing, I think it came across pretty good. So I really don't have any major complaints about Sunflower. And then we have Wow, a song that I honestly am going to put in this great tier. Wow kind of was, I think, massively glossed over, and I'm not necessarily sure why. It has a catchy groove. Posty's delivery on it is excellent, in my opinion. Lyrically, it's a very party-centric track. It's definitely a party track. It's a very simplistic track, too. The beat is very straight to the point, very simple. The hi-hat, just a simple rhythm throughout. But I think despite it being simple, it packs a powerful punch, and it remains to be one of my favorite songs of his that I end up coming back to a lot. And I think it's one of the highlights on Hollywood's Bleeding. And then we get Goodbyes, which is honestly up there with Rockstar as being one of my favorite Post Malone singles. For me, Goodbyes is the perfect blend of the kind of more raw, more simplistic tone of a track like Wow, but with some of those more melodic tendencies that we saw him experiment with on Rockstar and on Better Now. Goodbyes and then Young Thug's feature, I think, is really, really great. Just the melancholic tone of it, the sort of, catchiness of it, but not annoyingly catchiness of it. To me, Goodbyes is like the quintessential Post Malone track, in my opinion. Arguably his best song. I remember I was so hyped for this track. I stayed up all night, it was like the 4th of July or something. And it honestly did, in some regards, blow me away in the terms that I knew I was going to enjoy it, but I didn't know I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. And to this day, Goodbyes remains one of my favorite Posty tracks. And then the last one we have here is Circles. I'm debating where to put this because it's a good song, but I'm not sure if it's a great song. I like it a lot. I'd be lying if I said I haven't come back to it a ton, but in the grand scheme of his career, I feel like this could be a turning point. And I'm actually just going to put Circles in that good tier. It's a really good song. What can I say? It's a really good, catchy pop track with a bit of a Fleetwood Mac-esque instrumental. However, I do think the overplayable value of it hurts it. And I'm not one to criticize songs for being overplayed, but I feel like the formula that Post Malone uses worked on Circles, his kind of usual formula. He still sounds strong on Circles, don't get me wrong. However, I just don't feel like it translates nearly as excellent on a more rock-centric and like kind of folky song as it does a more hip-hop, trap, cloud-based song. That's the only reason why Circles is in the good tier, not the great tier. I still really enjoy the song. However, I just feel like the formula comes across a bit more odd and off-putting. Needless to say, I think this is a pretty solid ranking. You know, I really do think that Rockstar and Goodbyes are two of his best singles, but also in the great tier, White Iverson is an extremely important song. So is Too Young, two of his best singles as well. And Psycho and Wow are two really strong ones. I also believe that in the good tier, we with these songs, Go Flex, Congratulations, Better Now, Sunflower, Circles, all relatively solid tracks here. I don't have anything too negative to say about them, but I also don't have like endless amounts of praise. I think they're good. I think they get the point across. Candy Paint is a decent single in my opinion. I enjoy it, but I don't feel like it packs as powerful of a punch. And unfortunately, the only one here that I had major issues with is Deja Vu. I just feel like it, especially considering what he released beforehand. But and just a quick recap of the albums. I think Beer Bong and Bentley's is his best one, at least getting a 9 out of 10 for me. Hollywood's Bleeding has aged, has dwindled on me a little, but I still think it is a pretty strong 8 out of 10. Stoney, I think, is a 7, and August 26 is a 6. And with that being said, that is it. This might have been a little longer. I can't see the time, so I really don't know. But you know, just a bit of a closer here. I understand Post Malone isn't the most appreciated in more critical communities, in more music-centric communities, because and, you know, for a lot of reasons. For one, like I said, he isn't as lyrically, you know, genius. He's not like some lyrical mastermind or anything. But in terms of pop rap, in terms of that kind of stuff, I genuinely do think Post Malone is one of the best out there. I enjoy him a ton. I have some more personal preferences towards his style as well, and I just think that he deserves a little more praise, a little bit more open mind. However, I'm not going to act like he's underrated. He's arguably the biggest artist out there. With that being said, that is it for now, and goodbye.